And let me just double check that we are rolling. I believe we are. There we are. Okay. Maximize that. Tad Doyle.
Yes,
how
sir.
are you? How
I'm
are
doing
you?
well.
It's very cool for you to take the time to join me on Real. This is my first live stream version of these conversations in isolation. So it's really cool for you to be the guinea pig.
Hell yeah.
On that front.
I'll drink to that.
Fair enough. I will too. Coffee. There we go.
Two Irishmen drinking coffees.
Yes. So I'm going to start, buddy, with, I'm going to get the fanboy moment out of the way. Okay. And I'll just summarize it this way. My wife, Jess, and I were talking last night as I was getting ready for this. And she reminded me that we went on our first date in 1991. And there was a certain album that was put out that year. And it was in the car on the entire first date, this particular album. I won't go into detail about which album it was, but a band you were in put out an album in 91. And at the end of that night, she goes, "Who the hell is this band?" And I told her the name of that band. I said, "Oh, this is Ted." And she goes, "God, I love this music." And in some ways, I knew at that moment that she was somebody who was going to be in my life for a long while. And it's a memory that stuck with her. So, dude, I just want to thank you for making songs that are heavy as all hell, but also just are part of the soundtrack to my life. Okay. And I want to thank you for that. That's my fanboy moment. Thank you very much, Tad Doyle, for making the music you do. With that out of the way.
Thank you for that. That's really kind of you.
No
it's
problem.
nice to do that, to be able to do that.
And I'm interested now. We're just going to jump straight to 2018, brother. Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm really fascinated in the music that you have been putting out the past several years. Before we get to 2008, I'd be remiss if I didn't just make sure to ask you how you are doing, how Peg's doing. We're living in a strange time right now. And I'm just kind of, everyone that I'm doing these interviews with, I'm just seeing how folks are doing, seeing how, it's a crazy time. So just checking in, brother, on how things are going.
Yeah, man, we're doing right. We're doing all right. I've been doing a lot of yard work. We got a third of an acre out here in South Seattle. Peggy is an emergency first responder for a utility. So right now she is, they're only taking dire emergencies. And so it's nice to have her home a little bit more, but when the call comes, she's got to go. And it doesn't matter where it is. So, I mean, she's my hero.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful to her and all the emergency first responders who have really stepped up to this and put their lives on the line and set aside their well-being and safety to help other people. That's really that's amazing to me. But other than that, with me, this is what I do, man. I make the audio donuts and I glaze them every day. So, I, like a friend of mine said, as audio engineers, this is what we've trained for our whole lives.
There you go.
Alone and, paying attention to music all the time. So,
absolutely.
I mean, it's a blessing.
I think a lot of people, there was that initial almost shock, right? Just because none of us have been through a situation like this before. It's been decades and maybe even longer than that. But after that initial adjustment period came, I'm finding that a lot of the people that I'm talking to who are musicians and artists, they're using it as a moment to get reflective and to also get creative at this, kind of, it's proving to be an interesting and fertile ground, I think, for some wonderful experiments in music, etc.
Absolutely.
And I think that is a perfect bridge for me over to the work that you've been doing recently. Because when I think of kind of experimental, uh, avant-garde, this stuff just jumped out at me. The first release came out, and this is of the new. This is put out under the name Thomas Andrew Doyle. There'll be a link down in the description to where you can find that. Incineration Ceremony came out in 2018. And this was a work, there's a bunch of different words I could use to describe it. I mean, it's epic. The range in both within songs and between songs is incredibly impressive. I'm interested in having you talk about that first album, kind of where it came from. This is reaching back for you in many ways, and is a return to your past in some ways, but through the filter of your life experience, I'm getting the sense of. So I'd like to turn the floor over to you. Have you start with that first album, and maybe in particular talk about how this approach to creativity through this means of music is allowing you, I would argue, to hit a broader range of emotions and a deeper study of human emotions than maybe you have before. So I'm just going to turn the floor over to you. Talk to me about that first release, Incineration Ceremony.
Well, yeah, you're correct. It came out in 2018. It is a result of a lot of self-truths being revealed, and I'm predisposed to depression, and I mean, a lot of that comes from being depressed. So it's kind of amused in a way, but the music was just something I was just fiddling around about with, when I didn't have clients in the studio, and I was doing a podcast at the time too, when I didn't have a lot of, if there wasn't somebody in the studio, I had to keep busy, I mean, that's how I go. But writing music or that, but I do have a symphonic background that I went to school and studied for.
And that was in Idaho, I think, Boise.
Yeah, Boise State University. I studied music, and I bailed out after my first year because I decided that what I wanted to do in music was not being taught. And although I thought it was valuable to have ear training and learning about how, the format and where it came from and how it's written was very valuable. And I still use it to this day. But I come from, a hard rock, metal, jazz, punk rock, that's where I come from. And I remember being in school and studying, Baroque, and at night going home and listening to Buzzcocks and, just really digging on that. But, and I played in jazz clubs, but, this whole inspiration came from just wanting to try something different. And I was, to be honest, I was inspired by a friend of mine who you may know, a guy named Peter Scartabello.
Yes, the name is familiar. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a composer back east, and I've been friends with him since MySpace days.
Wow.
And I've never met him in person. It's just we've always had phone conversations, and we've never even done a video chat or anything. And we've had quite a friendship built up over the years, and he actually put out the CD of the first Incineration Ceremony recording, and for that I'm grateful. It sold out. It was really fun to do. I was glad that he shared my vision and took me into his label, YouGoth Records. So I mean, he's still doing it, and he's one of the guys I sent the just finished new one that I'm going to come out with soon.
Yes.
Today, as well as you and a few other people.
Yeah, and that one's called Accretion Mass. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yes, I have had pleasure of listening to that today. Pretty much, that was the opportunity, and I'm absolutely blown away. It, it, I hear it's interesting. You talked about the Buzzcocks, because what's interesting to me is when I hear the new material, I'm going to throw out some people that for me I hear connections to, and you maybe tell me if I'm wrong or right. But for me, I hear, to me, I hear Marconi a little bit in there, in particular with the use of some of the percussion and the way that you utilize that. Stravinsky, in particular in the new material, I hear some Stravinsky. I also hear like Alan Berg and Pierre Boulez and some of these really almost atonal composers, kind of tone road composers put in there. So I think what I'm trying to say is that you're drawing on a huge reservoir of kind of inspiration when you're writing this new material. It would seem to me, as an outsider listening to it.
Yep. And
Yeah.
you've hit the nail on the head on quite a few. And there's also a few others, like one of my all-time favorites is a guy named Edgar Varese, who was late 18th century, early 19th century expatriate of France, who came here to the States and wrote some of the most amazing music. And I think he's one of the pioneers that actually had one of the first guys to use synthesizers in his music in the early 1900s.
Wow.
And that guy's music has always been really, it hit home to me. So avant-garde and definitely challenging, you know. I love that. And there's a lot of composers that are, you know, in my head right now, but I can't get them out of my mouth.
Absolutely. I hear you. I'll be, when I listen to Incineration Ceremony, and this might be blasphemous because it did a lot of soundtracks, but Jerry Goldsmith, who did the original 1960s Planet of the Apes soundtrack with the incredible use of percussion and bells and cymbals and stuff. Geez. I was listening to one of the pieces, and in my mind, I'm like, I was picturing going through that desert wasteland in the first like 20 minutes of the Charlton Heston old Planet of the Apes. I'm like, oh my God, Doyle's taking me, you know, it's like a soundtrack in so many ways for me. The new material that you're putting out, is that a desire of yours, a goal to kind of connect in that sense with maybe the film industry or some visual medium?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know where to begin to get into that type of thing. I've always wanted to do film soundtracks for quite a while. And not only that, I'd love to get in and tap into some of that Netflix and Hulu stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel that I'm seasoned enough now that I'm not a one-trick pony. I think I've proved that, but I can do a lot of different things. I mean, not just this symphonic stuff. I have a electronic thing that's going to come out fairly soon.
Very cool.
But for now, my focus is.
You hinted at the electronic when you did Times of Radiation. You hinted at some electronic possibilities in that, right? I mean, that was a single release in May of 2019. But I was wondering if you were going to play around with some more of those combinations as well. That kind of mixture of the techno / synth kind of music with the orchestral. I thought Times was a really good mixture of that. So are you planning to go down that direction in the future as well?
Absolutely. There's some, I think I've got a full one in the hopper ready to go, but I just, you know, obsessive compulsive. I like to, you know, listen to it and I'll hear something that doesn't sit right with me and I'll piddle around with it for a little bit more. And then eventually, like 3 days ago, I had to let go and say, look, this is done. It's not going to get any better. At this point, if it's not, you know, the minuscule amounts that I'm adjusting things, nobody's going to give a shit or even hear that stuff except for me.
Right. So how do you know? How do you know when you're ready to birth this on the world? Is it just a function of necessity? I got to get this damn thing out, or is it you kind of like, okay, I've had enough of this. I need to move on to something else at this point.
Well, that's interesting you bring that up, because one of them is because I feel like as a guy who's getting older, and I realize more and more my mortality on a daily basis. I mean, I've got aches and pains where I couldn't even imagine they would come from. But you know, I just go, hey man, you know, my days are numbered here, and I've got a lot of shit I want to get out. So I've been like full steam ahead writing stuff and cataloging it. I've actually got, I think, 3 more symphonic works, full symphonic works ready to go that have been written. And they're pretty much mixed except for the obsessive compulsive part of it.
Right.
And you know, there's another thing is like I this is what I do. I can't help it. I mean, I love to do this stuff, and it brings. When I was writing Incineration Ceremony, I was laughing my ass off doing it. It's like, oh man, to me, I was entertaining myself just playing it and like listening to it, and putting all that, you know, the weird avant-garde stuff in, and like weird angular, you know, things that I was doing with it, the horns and whatnot. It was.
I think it brought you joy, man. In a weird way, I think it brought you joy. You know, a dark experience. You know, there's a weird dialectic there, right? Exploring the dark in some occasions can be a very liberating experience. And hearing you describe the process of making the album, you're kind of pointing to that joyous side of pondering the dark in some ways.
Yeah, believe me, I'm very experienced in the dark, and I'm sure a lot of people are. You know, that's not unique to me, but you know, when I got to my 50s, I decided, man, I want to be happy. I don't want to fucking go through life like this anymore. And I want to live full and let my freak flag fly and be who I am. You know, I don't give a shit anymore what people think of me, or, you know, or even have an opinion. That's not my business. My business is just being this, whatever that is, and realizing that I don't have a definition, and I'm rarely who I think I am. Not from a not from a crazy man's perspective, but, you know, identifying as the observer. You know, is like, if I can look out at the situation from outside of what's really happening on a lot of things in my life, I'm much happier.
You can find those. You can find possibilities that you may not have seen if you say stuck in that mindset. You know,
right?
It's liberating.
Yeah, I had a friend that says that the worst neighborhood I ever lived in was between my ears. You know, and I'm a guy that's, you know, constantly, you know, flatulated myself with, you know, beat myself up all the time. Tell myself all these horrible things, and nobody would. If somebody talked to me like that in real person, they would not be in my life. I would cut them off. But it's
Absolutely
weird, you know.
The internal dialogue can be a bitch.
Right. Yeah.
You know, it really can. I want to shift now a little bit. We're still dealing with the dark, because, and perhaps even more so, because in October of 2018, just in time for Halloween, you released Experiments of the Spectral Order. And I just want to talk about one thing relative to that album, and maybe have you go off on that. And that's simply the first song, Adorned in Maggots. What that song, and really all of the new material, point to for me, is the many faces of heaviness. We, you know, I love just as much as the next guy to get right in front of the stage and see a wall of Marshall Stacks or Orange, you know, whatever and just feel that vibration when somebody hits a chord, and there's a beauty to that form of heaviness.
Yeah.
But in Adorned in Maggots, you're able to show us that heaviness just doesn't need to be constrained by this notion of, you know, down-tuned guitars and heavy distortion. You're showing that no, heaviness has been around a lot longer, than electronic, than electric amplification, and it can take many more forms. So I'm just interested in hearing you talk about the way you explore the range of heaviness through this new music that you're putting out there, because I think that piece really, that I'm wearing an Exhumed shirt, right? And this is brutal death metal, but quite frankly, Adorned in Maggots is more brutal than about 99% of brutal death metal that I hear. So I'm just interested in hearing you talk about heaviness in the new material.
Well, I think heaviness comes from life experiences for me. That's my perspective, at least. And you know, I I was the fat kid in grade school who was carrying a tuba to school every day without a case. So I mean, it was obvious, and all the, you know, all the things that go with that, and kids loving to pick on other kids. Like
Mm,
I became a loner. Um,
mm,
believe me, I don't feel I'm a victim. At one point I did when I was a kid. It's like, why the hell is this happening to me? And blah blah blah. And uh, but you know, you move past that, and certainly I am free of that shit now. You know, it's wonderful to not have to, you know, have that weight of fitting in, or being you know, carrying the torch of, you know, the norm or whatever that is. But I mean, that's kind of what inspired me with a lot of that stuff, is just the freedom to to let that shit out in a way that was healthy, and without harming somebody and harming myself,
mhm.
which I spent a lot of years harming myself. You know, I overate, and you know, drug abuse, alcohol abuse, you know, all kinds of shit. But I just hope that if there's anybody out there who has all these voices in their heads that's constantly berating them, that they stop and think for a second that it may not be true,
Mm.
and it's not the truth. But whatever. I think I'm getting too weird and philosophical on this. But
I'm loving going down this train of thought, but I hear you. I think that also that's when it's very helpful to have somebody to reach out for. I know that you've got some people near and dear to you, as I do, and that can be an immense help as well. Kind of just reaching out to people in those moments, I think, can be helpful as well. Uh, you mind if we segue to accretion mass at this moment and kind of give a little tease here to these people?
sure, man.
So we have 10 tracks. Again, I would say that this is actually even more rooted in the orchestral than Incineration Ceremony. That's just, I've listened to it only twice, and so that's just my initial thinking. Some songs jump out right away. The second track, Planets.
Hmm.
Your use of real dynamic ranges there, you know, starting with the very quiet guitar, then building, and then you know, and then stripping down to its I believe it's a lone piano, and then it's joined by a woodwind of some kind. Just lovely piece. Axis has this drony, almost meditative, and not necessarily in the purely Buddhist sense, but also in the kind of like Marcus Aurelius, like really thinking through your life sense. But the song I want to talk about in particular is well, there's two of them. Noir Saturnia is just exquisite. And one of the things that really spoke to me about that song, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. A lot of musicians I'm talking to lately, the subject of space and openness within their songs is a topic that we touch on. And so, for example, at the beginning of Noir Saturnia, you open with some very simple chords on the piano that just sustain for a long period of time, and it got me to thinking about the importance of having space in music, and in particular having space because it leaves you leave the listener on the seat of their edge sometimes. waiting for what's going to come next by having the balls to put some quietness in there, almost silence within the middle of the songs. So talk to me about your use of openness and space within this new music, and not feeling this urge to fill every fucking measure up with 16th notes, and just letting the music sit and grow. Because as a listener, I found it exquisite to be able to take that in. So maybe if you could talk just about the use of space and openness in music.
Well, I think the why I do that is because I approach it from a standpoint of we live in a society where it's like bam, bam, bam. There's always noise. In fact, when I lay down to go to bed at night, I can hear the freeway, and I'm in a house. The windows are shut. I can still hear it. I can hear jets flying overhead. I mean, we're just inundated with noise, and probably not a lot of it is very healthy noise. But I've always felt that some of the best moments in music were in between the notes, you know,
Yes.
and that is an art form in itself. In fact, I can't remember the name of this guy. He's a composer, and he wrote a piece where it's 8 minutes of silence. And
isn't that, I think it's a Philip Glass piece, right? I think it's one of his earliest pieces. Yeah, exactly. Go ahead, tell the story. Yeah, it's incredible.
Well, I don't know. I just saw it on YouTube one of these days, a few months back, and it was a guy. It's a full orchestra. They're sitting there. They're prepared to play, and he starts conducting. You know, and it's like, you know, you get 3 minutes into that, and they're showing the people in the audience going, what the hell is going on? You know,
yes.
But it's, I mean, that was the point, you know, it's like, you know, it's quiet.
Yes.
It can be deafening, you know, and it's powerful.
Absolutely.
I mean, a lot of blast beats, and, you know, I love metal. I love blast beats. I love all that stuff, but I've dealt with a lot of bands that they fill every hole, and there's nothing left, and it's fatiguing at times. You know, I mean, I love metal just as much as the other guy, but you know, after a while you go, shit, I need to get in the forest or something, you know, or you know, a deprivation tank, which I would really love to do that. I've never been in one. I've heard it's not a good idea if you have any kind of.
I would have a panic attack instantly. I'm not going to go into one of those things.
Yeah, well, you never know.
I do. So we are coming up tomorrow. This album is going to be available for pre-order tomorrow. Am I correct?
Yes, which means I got a lot of work to do tonight.
Fair enough. And tomorrow is actually a special day. The Bandcamp is doing this is another one of those days where all of the proceeds go directly to the artist. Am I correct?
Yes, they're not taking their usual share, which is really cool. I wish that PayPal and all the other pay portals would join them on that, but you know, banks are banks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was another thing that built a fire under my ass too, to get it done, because I got that email from Bandcamp, and I'm like, well, Jesus, I've got 5 records in the hopper here. Why don't I finish one of them and quit being a obsessive compulsive old chooch?
Right,
you know?
Right.
So
that's awesome.
That's what inspired that to happen.
That's good. So I want to make sure that everyone knows to go check out the Bandcamp page tomorrow for Tad to get your pre-order of Accretion Mass, because it kicks incredible ass. I have one final question that I want to get. I want to ask you. But before that, I just want to circle back. You were talking about sitting in your room. It's night. You can hear the highway. You can hear the planes. The windows are closed. The one thing that one of the silver linings of what's going on right now, and this has come up with Leila Abdul Rauf from the band Vastoom, she does a lot of field recordings, is how now, because we kind of talked around the idea of noise pollution, and we just talked with that going down now, I'm starting to notice things like the frogs outside of my house now are like Nigel Tufnell up to 11, it seems like, just because there's nothing else there. And I'm wondering if you're finding, I live a bit more out in the sticks, out on the Key Peninsula. I'm wondering if you're finding that kind of closer to the heart of Seattle. You're finding that the ambient noise is just going down and allowing you to notice other kind of sonic things going on?
It has absolutely dropped. I mean, the level has dropped. I feel like the air is healthier.
Yeah.
And I've seen some photos of you know, the atmosphere healing and nature being able to take a breather from humanity's brutaling bludgeonings, you know.
Yes, absolutely.
And I mean, I think it's so good for the planet that this is happening. I think people are going to die, and that's too bad. And there's a lot of good people dying, but you know, maybe it's time that, you know, for the thinning of the herd in a way. And if I'm the guy that has to be one of those that gets thinned out, you know, so be it. You know, I'm not worried about it. At first, it really freaked me out to be able to get up. I get up at 3:30 or 4 in the morning generally.
Damn.
So it freaked me really out to come out and not hear the freeway.
Yeah.
A month or so ago, and it was still there, but it was not the same. And it was before all the leaves and the flowers started coming out, so I could still see through it down into the freeway, a mile or so away from my place. And it was stark, and it was kind of unsettling. And at that point, I decided, man, I can't watch the news. It's going to give me so much anxiety. Yeah. So my wife, she keeps in touch with it because she's got to for her job.
Absolutely.
I play music and record music. I don't know. I need to know the news except for what I get from her, which is important. She's kind of my filter.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, it's just, I hope that there isn't people going nuts with this, you know. I do know that you mentioned that your wife is a counselor of some sort, and she's helping some people out,
yeah,
you know, with that. And that can be challenging. And
absolutely. It's a crazy time. It's a really crazy time. I mean, I told you on the phone earlier today, I was a teacher in a previous incarnation, version 2.3, I think it was. But now I'm a teacher again for my 3 kids, and I'm having to get my chops up on that stuff again. You know, that's a hard switch to have to throw back on after a bunch of years. I did want to mention Ape Studios, just because you had mentioned in a phone call, and I got to hear a little bit about this. You were talking about the possibility of doing remote recording in this time of kind of social isolation. So maybe just give us the little thumbnail about Witch Ape, and then just talk to me about the particular challenges around that. I would think that would be super difficult.
Well, it is, because there's what the internet has is latency. I mean, right now, for instance, I'm talking to you, and I've got the feed of us talking on my laptop here, and there's a little bit of a delay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're going to record in an immediacy, somebody doing vocals, and they're hearing stuff coming back at them, it's very disorienting, you know, unless it's intentional delay. But it usually, you know, singer doesn't want that. But yeah, I mean, there's some really good companies are developing things like audio movers, or doing something that's going to help people to at least listen to a mix while it's being mixed with, you know, maybe, you know, half-second delay of internet. You know, that's the problem, is internet has a delay.
Absolutely.
But I'm looking into it, and I think there's some companies that are coming up with some really good alternatives,
kind of workarounds for that issue.
Yeah, you and I are living in an age where all of us are living in this age now where eventually music is going to become instantaneous on the web. I mean, it's going to happen that day. I don't know how, but it's going to be a reality. And I know that like maybe even 5-10 years from now, I'm going to laugh if I'm still alive and go, I remember the old days where we had a 50-second millisecond delay, and
it's like trying
kids.
It's like trying to talk to my kids about cassettes, and I mean, it's like an 8-track. What?
Yeah. Why would you want to do that?
Yeah, I know. And they look at vinyl collectors and say, "Oh, you guys are cute. You're so cute." Everything's digital. How long has Witch Ape been around now?
Well, it started on a different house that Peggy and I had over in more centralized in Seattle, and that was in 2006.
Okay, wow, good.
And so we had that, and I don't know, what year is it? What day is it?
Fair enough. It's been around for close to 15 years then, almost. I think,
right.
If my math is correct.
And I've been serious about, my craft in recording and mixing for that long.
Unbelievable. That's awesome.
Before that, I was a tire kicker, as my dad used to call it.
Well, so you talked about your dad. So we're talking about a younger Tad. This is my last question that I give. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I grab you and I have a time machine, and I'm going to take you back to see yourself when you are 15 years old. I don't know where you lived when you were 15. I don't know what the fuck was going on. We'll say it was a good day. And I tell you, you got 1 minute to hang out with younger Mr. Doyle. What piece of advice are you going to give that young man?
Take it easy, because nothing is as big a deal as you think it is. And you're going to be okay. Just relax and be yourself. Don't try to fit in. I mean, there's 15 minutes with somebody like that. That's a tough one. Did you say 15 minutes?
I just said 1 minute. You could give yourself 1 minute. Yeah, 1 minute. One piece of advice. But I actually think the piece of advice you just gave was really good.
Yeah.
Right. Be yourself. Relax.
Yeah.
Things aren't as fucking serious as you think they are when you're going through them. And I know that's easy to say in retrospect, but when you get gray like us, you see that shit.
Yeah. There's a film that I can't remember the name of right now, but it's Powers of 10. I think you can find it on YouTube. It's pretty amazing, and it really lets you know just how infinitesimal and small we are in the universe. And it's glorious. Yes. I mean, that's kind of why I'm fascinated with the universe and beyond, and the size of things and the magnitude of how expansive it is, and it's nuts. It's too big for my pea brain to even conceive of.
That's the beauty of it, right?
And that's where the comfort lies, man. Because like you realize, the dinosaurs might have been thinking, shit, man, I got to get some food today. The wife's bitching at me, or whatever. It could be anything.
Why do I have these tiny fucking arms?
Right. A rock comes out of the sky and slams into the planet. I guess that wasn't such a big deal.
Exactly.
Now I'm extinct as a result. But whatever. I don't know.
Perspective, it's a bitch. It takes so long to gain. It's a hard journey to gain perspective, but it's worth it when you get there.
Yeah. There's some people out there that are very young that have that. And I envy that they had that so soon. And some of them are just born, with that comfort and knowing that they're here now. Yeah. They're not worried about yesterday, what was said, or what might happen tomorrow. They're just right here.
Absolutely.
And I have to work really hard at doing that myself. So it's fun to see.
It's a journey. It's a journey, and
Yeah.
it sounds like you're on your way. It sounds like you've also found a way to help you on that journey. I think the new material is allowing you to find some joy amidst the bullshit. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So I want to remind everyone to go to Bandcamp tomorrow, because a marvelous release is available for pre-order, and that's Thomas Andrew Doyle's Accretion Mass, Tad's Accretion Mass. It kicks ass. I want to thank you for taking the time, dude. We did this 2 days ago. We decided to fucking do this.
Yep.
And people don't realize that about 2 minutes before going live, we almost didn't go live, and we pulled it off. So it was a real pleasure for me. It was a real honor. I started with being a fanboy, and I'll just end by saying that this was really special for me. And I want to thank you for all of the tunes that you've made. And I look forward to seeing where your journey goes. You already have, what, 3 or 4 more records already made. You're just doing your tweaks, your masterful tweaks. But thank you very much, Tad. You're a hell of a guy.
Thanks for doing what you do too, man, because that's very helpful right now.
That's awesome.
And I'm grateful that you even give a shit. So kudos to you, my man.
Rock and roll, Tad. Someday you and I will see each other face to face, brother.
That's right. Get ready for a hug.
Absolutely. All right. I'll talk to you on the other side. I'll send you links and stuff. But thanks everyone for watching.
Thanks, John.
Adios.
Adios.